Once upon a time, there was a king who had 4 wives. The king loved his 4th wife the most. He dressed her in the finest clothes and treated her to delicious delicacies. The king also loved his 3rd wife dearly. He often took her on visits to neighboring countries. Similarly, the king loved his 2nd wife. She was his confidant. Whenever the king encountered any troubles, he would seek her advice, and with her help, he overcame difficulties. The king's 1st wife was loyal and had sacrificed a lot to protect the king's wealth and throne. However, the king did not cherish this wife. Despite her deep love for him, the king remained indifferent. Finally, the king fell seriously ill. With little time left, he thought to himself, "I have 4 wives, but can only take one with me when I die?" So, he asked his 4th wife, "I love you the most. Will you accompany me to the grave?" "Forget about it," the 4th wife replied, and left without looking back. Heartbroken, the king then asked his 3rd wife, "I have loved you all my life. Are you prepared to come with me?" "No. Once you're dead, I'll remarry," the 3rd wife answered. He then asked his 2nd wife, "You have always helped me. Now, can you come with me?" She replied, "This time, I cannot help you. The most I can do is bury you." At that moment, a voice came, saying, "I will accompany you. Wherever you go, I will be with you." The king looked in the direction of the voice and saw it was his 1st wife. Gazing at his 1st wife, who was thin and weak due to neglect, tears welled up in the king's eyes as he said, "I should have treated you better." In reality, each one of us has 4 wives in our lifetime. The 4th wife is our body. No matter how much time and effort we spend in taking care of it, once we leave this world, our body will also leave us. The 3rd wife represents wealth, power, and status. When we die, these things will pass into someone else's hands. The 2nd wife is our family and friends. No matter how much they may help us, at most, they can only accompany us to the gates of the cemetery. Our 1st wife is our soul. In life, people are always chasing after wealth, power, and pleasures, often neglecting the soul. However, only the soul will accompany us to the ends of the earth. My friend, in the busy and stressful life, do not forget to maintain a pure and peaceful soul. Treat your wives well. Can you understand this story? One day, Sam came running back home from school, visibly upset. His father, seeing his gloomy face, asked, "What's wrong with you?" "What's wrong?" "Tommy said something that made me angry. I can't take it anymore," Sam said indignantly. "What did he say about you?" "He said I'm short," Sam exclaimed. "Even though I'm short, I have a big heart. Is that so?" After asking the question, Sam's father silently grabbed a basin and took Sam to the seaside. His father filled the basin with water and then tossed a small stone into it, causing all the water to splash out. Then, he threw an even larger stone into the ocean. Only a small ripple appeared before the sea regained its calmness, without a single drop of water splashing out. Is your heart really big? But why is it that when someone throws a small stone into your heart, you react like the water in the basin, splashing everything out? His father asked. The lesson of this story is that we should learn not to let others' criticism or belittlement affect our emotions and self-confidence. We should cultivate a heart that is tolerant, resilient, and full of love. Like the vast sea, capable of accommodating different perspectives and criticism without disturbing our inner peace and self-worth. Once upon a time, there was a farmer in the countryside who had an old donkey. One day, the old donkey accidentally fell into the farmer's dry well. The farmer heard the donkey's mournful braying and saw its predicament. After thinking for a while, he realized that there was no way to rescue the old donkey. So he decided to ask his neighbors for help. Together, they planned to shovel dirt into the well to bury the donkey alive and put an end to its suffering. People began to vigorously shovel dirt into the well, and the old donkey was terrified. However, as the farmer and his neighbors kept throwing dirt onto its back, a flash of inspiration crossed the old donkey's mind. It suddenly became aware that every time the dirt piled up on its back, it should shake it off and step up onto the newly formed mound. Determined, the donkey repeated this process over and over again, murmuring to itself, "Shake it up and step up," regardless of how painful it felt to have the dirt hitting its back, or how hopeless the situation seemed. The old donkey refused to panic and kept going. After an unknown amount of time, exhausted and covered in wounds, the donkey finally jumped over the edge of the well and triumphantly returned to safety. It turned out that the very dirt that was supposed to destroy it had become its salvation. All this transformation came from the attitude the old donkey maintained when facing adversity. Life is similar. When we encounter difficulties, if we can face them bravely, Refuse to give up easily, and remain undisturbed, without anger or self-pity. Those problems that were supposed to ruin us and hurt us may turn into blessings. There was a boy who grew up in an orphanage and often asked the director pessimistically, "What is the meaning of living for someone like me, who nobody wants? Where is the value of life?" The director always smiled and did not answer. The boy became increasingly sad and confused because he couldn't get an answer. One day, the director called the boy over and handed him a colorful, vibrant stone, saying, "Tomorrow morning, take this stone to the market to sell, but it's not for real selling. Remember, no matter how much money others offer, you must not sell it." The boy was full of doubts, thinking, although this stone is nice, who would be willing to spend money on it? The next day, the boy squatted in the marketplace, and unexpectedly, many people wanted to buy the stone from him, and the prices kept getting higher. When he returned to the orphanage, the boy excitedly reported to the director, "I can't believe a stone can be worth so much money." The director smiled and said, "Tomorrow, take it to the gold market. Remember, no matter how much people offer, you cannot sell it." In the gold market, someone offered a price 10 times higher than the previous day to buy the stone. The boy was greatly surprised, but he remembered the director's words and refused to sell it. On the third day, the director asked the boy to take the stone to the gem market. As a result, the value of the stone rose tenfold from the previous day. Because the boy never sold it, the stone was acclaimed as a rare treasure. The boy happily returned to the orphanage, holding the stone and reporting everything to the director. The director gazed at the boy and slowly said, "The value of a person's life is like this stone. It has different meanings in different environments. Do you understand?" The boy shook his head, puzzled and not understanding. A seemingly insignificant stone, due to your cherishing and refusal to sell, its value has been elevated, and it is now considered a rare treasure. You are just like this stone. As long as you value yourself, cherish yourself, your life will have meaning and value. This time, the boy nodded, contemplating the lesson. After a while, he finally grasped the underlying truth and smiled brightly. The meaning of life and the purpose of existence have always been the most common questions people ask. Many philosophers have profound arguments about it. However, in this vast world, every person can have a reason to live worthily, whether it's for fame, wealth, ideals, or love. As long as it is positive and harmless, it is worthy of admiration. But most importantly, one must learn to cherish oneself, the body, mind, physical strength, and treasure oneself as an individual who has the opportunity to experience life, appreciating the infinite potential hidden within. We may be just an inconspicuous stone, but it is unique, priceless, and an irreplaceable treasure that is not for sale. Its value lies in being cherished. But if you don't even cherish yourself, no matter how great the value, it is equivalent to zero. Once, an experiment was conducted where the fiercest shark was placed in the same tank as a group of tropical fish, separated by reinforced glass. Initially, the shark relentlessly rammed against the invisible barrier, but to no avail. It could never cross over to the other side. The researchers would introduce some carp into the tank every day, so the shark never went hungry. However, it still desired to reach the other side, to taste the exquisite flavor waiting there. Each day, it continued to collide with the glass, trying every corner and exerting all its strength, but only ended up with bruises and multiple wounds, sometimes even bleeding. This went on for quite some time, and every time a crack appeared in the glass, the researchers would promptly add a thicker layer of glass. Eventually, the shark stopped ramming into the glass. It no longer paid any attention to the vibrant tropical fish, treating them as mere moving paintings on the wall. It started waiting for the carp that would appear in the same spot every day, then instinctively hunted them down with its agility, as if it regained its fierce dominance in the ocean. But it was all just an illusion. In the final stage of the experiment, the researchers removed the glass. However, the shark showed no reaction. It continued swimming in its designated area every day, completely ignoring the tropical fish and even giving up the chase. If any carp escaped to the other side, the experiment concluded, and the researchers mocked it as the most cowardly fish in the sea. But those who have experienced heartbreak know the reason. It is afraid of pain. You once bought a piece of clothing that you loved, but couldn't bring yourself to wear. Solemnly placed it in the closet. After a long while, when you saw it again, you realized it had become outdated. So, you missed your chance with it. You also bought a beautiful cake but couldn't bear to eat it, reverently storing it in the refrigerator. After a while, when you saw it again, you discovered it had expired. So, you missed your chance with it too. Clothes that never adorned you at the right time. Cakes that were never savored at their most delicious. And things you never did when you wanted to, all of these become regrets. Life also has an expiration date. And the things we want to do should be done sooner rather than later. If you only keep your aspirations solemnly tucked away in your heart without taking action, the only outcome is missing out on them. Just like that outdated clothing and that expired cake. Initially, I wanted to go to college so badly. I was obsessed with it. Then, I couldn't wait to graduate from college. After that, I wanted to get married, have children. I wanted it desperately. Later on, I eagerly wished for my children to grow up quickly, so I could go back to work. Then, every day, I yearned for retirement. I wanted it desperately. Now, I'm truly nearing the end of my life. Suddenly, I finally understand. I forgot to truly live. A blind person went to visit his relatives. After it got dark, his relatives kindly lit a lantern for him and said, "It's getting late, and the road is dark. Take this lantern with you on your way home." The blind person became furious and said, "You know I'm blind. Yet you give me a lantern to light my way. Are you mocking me?" His relative replied, "You have made a mistake of limited thinking. While you walk on the road, there are many other people also walking on it. By carrying the lantern, others can see you and avoid bumping into you." The blind person realized the truth and said, "You're right." This story teaches us that limited thinking involves considering things only from our own perspective, while holistic thinking requires us to consider ourselves within the entire environment. By thinking systematically, we discover that our actions have interactions with others. There was a couple who started dating in college and had a great relationship. When the guy finished his military service, he fully devoted himself to work. He knew that in order to marry his girlfriend, he needed to earn more money to buy a house, a car, and provide a comfortable environment for their future baby. So, the guy started working overtime every day, and their opportunities to meet each other decreased. Even when the girlfriend's father passed away, he only went to pay his respects briefly. One day, the girl called the guy and asked, "Are you still busy?" "Yes. I'm swamped every day," he replied. At that moment, the girl said, "It's okay. You can continue being busy. I already have a new boyfriend." Upon hearing this, the guy immediately dropped what he was doing and rushed to find his girlfriend. When he saw her, he asked, "Aren't you aware of how busy I am and that I can't free myself? Why did you say you have a new boyfriend?" "I'm glad to hear you say that," the girl replied calmly. "But now it's too late. My youth is limited, and I can't wait for you to earn more money to spend time with me." The word wait can be filled with a lot of anticipation for others, but it can also bring a lot of disappointment. Waiting for you to earn enough money. Parents may no longer be around. Children may no longer need your care. And you may have exhausted yourself or fallen ill. The English literary figure, Francis Bacon, said, "Opportunity has hair in front, but is bald behind. If you don't seize it immediately, you may only touch its baldness." Indeed, we can't always think, "I'll wait until I earn enough money." Sometimes, it's worth considering turning back. Otherwise, once an opportunity is missed, there will be regrets. There was a traveler who got lost and walked for half a day before seeing a small wooden cabin up ahead. As he approached the cabin, a person wearing sunglasses came out from inside. The traveler asked him for directions. "To the east. You can find a way. But there is no path to the west," the person said. As he told him, he took off his sunglasses. It turned out he was blind. "How can I trust a blind person to guide me?" the traveler thought. Skeptical, he thanked the blind person and hurriedly left. However, instead of following the blind person's direction to the east, he went west. After 2 days of walking, he realized he was trapped in a desert with no chance of going back, because he hadn't brought enough food. "In many ways, I am even worse off than a blind person," he wrote as his final message in the sand. In unknown domains, it is important to be humble and willing to seek advice from others, even if they are just workers without much formal education. Their experiences in that particular field are certainly more than what we know. If we disregard someone's advice based on their appearance, education, age, gender, disabilities, or any other superficial factors, a painful lesson will soon befall us. In 1929, after the stock market crash in New York, the boss of a large British company returned home with a heavy heart. "What's wrong, dear?" his wife asked with a charming smile. "It's over. It's over," I've been declared bankrupt by the court, and tomorrow the court will seize all our assets," he said, lowering his head in sadness. At that moment, his wife softly asked, "Has your body been seized too?" "No," he replied, confused, as he looked up. Then, "As your wife, have I been seized too?" "No." He wiped away the tears, looking at his wife helplessly. "What about the children? They are still young. They have nothing to do with this matter." "In that case, how can you say that all our assets will be seized? You still have a supportive wife and a group of hopeful children. Moreover, you have rich experience, a healthy body, and a sharp mind. As for the lost wealth, consider it a wasted effort in the past. You can earn it again in the future," his wife said. 3 years later, his company once again became one of the Fortune 500 companies, all thanks to a few words from his wife. When you feel discouraged, focus on what you have rather than what you don't or have lost. You will realize that you are already blessed with happiness. Once upon a time, there was a small island where happiness, sorrow, knowledge, and love, along with various other emotions, lived. One day, the emotions learned that the island was about to sink, so they all prepared boats to leave the island. Only love chose to stay, determined to endure until the very last moment. After a few days, the island was indeed about to sink, and love sought help. At that moment, Prosperity sailed by on a large ship. Love asked, "Prosperity, can you take me with you?" Prosperity replied, "No. My ship is filled with treasures of gold and silver, and there's no place for you." Love spotted Vanity on a glamorous little boat and pleaded, "Vanity, please help me." Vanity responded, "I can't help you. You're all wet, and you'll ruin my beautiful boat." Sorrow came forward, and Love turned to her for assistance, saying, "Sorrow, let me accompany you." Sorrow replied, "Oh, Love, I am too sorrowful myself. I want to be alone for a while." Happiness passed by Love without even hearing its call, as she was too caught up in her own joy. Suddenly, a voice came, saying, "Come, Love, I will take you." It was an elderly person. Love rejoiced but forgot to ask for the elder's name. After reaching the land, the elderly person walked away alone. Filled with gratitude towards the elder, Love asked Knowledge, "Who was the one who helped me?" The knowledgeable elder answered, "That was Time." Love inquired, "Time? Why would time help me?" The knowledgeable elder smiled and said, "Because only time can truly comprehend the greatness of love." In ancient times, there was a man named Ba. Whenever he got angry, he would run back home and circle around his house and land 3 times. Someone asked him what secret he had there, and Ba said, "While I run, I think to myself, my house is so small and my land is so little. How can I find time and energy to get angry with others? As soon as I think about this, my anger dissipates. Once my anger is gone, I have more time and energy to focus on my work." As time passed, Ba's house became bigger and his land increased. But whenever he got angry, he still ran around his house and land. One day, he kept running until the sun set. He persisted, and his grandson asked him, "Grandfather, now that you are so old and wealthy, why do you still do this?" Ba smiled and said, "My dear grandson, while I was running, I thought to myself, my house is so large now, and I have so much land. Why should I bother quarreling with others? As soon as I think about this, my anger disappears even more." There was a young monk who was responsible for sweeping the fallen leaves in the temple courtyard every morning. It was a tedious task, especially during the cold and windy mornings of autumn and winter. Every time the wind blew, the leaves would dance in the air and cover the ground. It took him a long time each day to clean up all the leaves, which gave him a headache. He always wanted to find an easier way for himself. One day, another monk told him, "Before you sweep the ground tomorrow, shake the trees vigorously to make all the leaves fall. Then the day after tomorrow, you won't have to struggle with sweeping the fallen leaves." The young monk thought it was a brilliant idea. So, the next day, he woke up early and shook the trees with all his might. This way, he could clean up today's and tomorrow's fallen leaves all at once. The young monk was extremely happy throughout the day. The following day, when the young monk entered the courtyard, he was stunned. The ground was once again covered in fallen leaves, just like before. The old monk approached him and said meaningfully, "Silly child, no matter how hard you try today, the leaves will still fall tomorrow." The young monk finally understood. In life, there are many things that cannot be anticipated or prevented. The only way is to live in the present moment with sincerity. There's no need to borrow troubles from tomorrow, or try to solve tomorrow's problems ahead of time. If there are worries tomorrow, you cannot solve them today. Each day has its own lessons to learn and tasks to accomplish. So, strive to do your best in today's tasks before worrying about tomorrow's. Once upon a time, there was a fox who was strolling along the road, when it suddenly came across a large vineyard. The grapevines were laden with fruits, and each grape looked delicious, making the fox's mouth water. The vineyard was surrounded by iron railings, and the fox tried to squeeze through the gaps in the railings to enter the vineyard. However, its body was too fat to fit through, so the fox decided to lose weight and make itself slim. It stayed hungry outside the vineyard for 3 days and 3 nights. And sure enough, it became slim. The fox's perseverance paid off, and it successfully squeezed into the vineyard. Inside the vineyard, the fox feasted to its heart's content. The grapes were incredibly sweet and fragrant. After eating for a while, the fox was finally satisfied. But when it tried to slip out of the vineyard, it realized that it had become too fat again and couldn't squeeze through the railings. So it had to stay hungry inside the vineyard for another 3 days and 3 nights, until it became as slim as before. And only then could it successfully wriggle out of the railings. As the fox returned to the outside world, looking at the grapes inside the vineyard, it couldn't help but sigh. "I entered with an empty stomach, and I left with an empty stomach. It was all in vain." Initially, I also thought this story was telling us that we come into this world alone, and we leave this world alone, and in the end, it's all for nothing. But the storyteller said, it's all about perspective. This story, just like life itself, has its focus on the middle part. You see how happy the fox was while eating in the vineyard. Even if life is ultimately empty, it should be an emptiness that's fulfilling. Even if life is a busy journey leading to nothing, we should still keep ourselves busy happily. A girl lost her beloved watch and became sad and unhappy. She lost her appetite and couldn't focus on anything. She even fell ill because of it. When a priest came to visit her, he asked, "If one day you accidentally lost $100,000, would you carelessly lose another 200,000 as well?" The girl replied, "Of course not." The priest then said, "Then why did you let yourself lose 2 weeks of happiness? And even sacrifice your health just because of losing a watch?" The girl jumped out of bed as if waking from a dream and said, "Yes. I refuse to keep losing. From now on, I will find a way to earn back a watch." Life, you see, is about winning and losing, and it's challenging. It doesn't matter if you lose, as long as you live honestly and true to yourself. That's what we call true life. Some people refuse to accept reality and start over, resulting in more and more losses, to the point where it becomes irreversible. If you have already lost, please remember what we often say: losing less is winning. Set a stop-loss point for yourself. Falling down doesn't always mean something bad, because you can see that beautiful little flower on the ground smiling at you. There is a toothpaste factory that produces excellent products with exquisite packaging, which is loved by customers. Its revenue has been increasing for 10 consecutive years, with an annual growth rate of 10% to 20%. However, in the 11th year, the performance stagnated, and the following 2 years were the same. The company manager called a senior meeting to discuss countermeasures. During the meeting, the company president made a promise, saying that whoever could come up with a solution to revive the company's performance would be rewarded with $100,000. A young manager stood up and handed a piece of paper to the president. After reading it, the president immediately wrote a $100,000 check for the manager. The note read, "Increase the opening of the toothpaste by 1 millimeter. If each consumer squeezes out the same length of toothpaste every morning, with a 1 millimeter wider opening, how much more toothpaste would be used each day?" The company immediately changed the packaging. In the 14th year, the company's revenue increased by 32%. Faced with changes in life, we often tend to stick to our conventional thinking methods. In reality, if you widen your mind by 1 millimeter, you will see that changes in life have their positive sides, full of opportunities and challenges. There was an American businessman sitting on a small fishing village's pier in Mexico, watching a Mexican fisherman dock his small boat. The boat was filled with several large yellowfin tuna. The American businessman praised the Mexican fisherman for catching such high-quality fish and asked how long it took to catch them. The Mexican fisherman replied that it only took a little while. The American then asked, "Why don't you stay out longer and catch more fish?" The Mexican fisherman shrugged and said, "These fish are enough to support my family's needs." Curious, the American asked, "So, what do you do with the rest of your day?" The Mexican fisherman explained, "Well, I sleep in, go fishing for a few more hours, come back and play with my children, take a nap with my wife, stroll into the village in the evening, have a few drinks, play the guitar with my friends. My days are full and busy." The American wasn't convinced and offered some advice. He said, "I'm a Harvard Business School graduate, and I can help you. You should spend more time fishing every day. And then you can save up to buy a bigger boat. With a bigger boat, you can catch even more fish and eventually buy more boats. Then you can have a whole fleet of fishing boats. Instead of selling your fish to the local fishmongers, you can sell them directly to processing plants. Eventually, you can start your own canned fish factory. That way, you'll have control over the entire production, processing, and marketing. You can leave this small fishing village and move to Mexico City, then Los Angeles, and finally, New York. There, you can expand your business empire." The Mexican fisherman asked, "How long will all this take?" The American replied, 15 to 20 years. The fisherman inquired further, "And then what?" The American laughed and said, "Then you can retire. You can move back to a small fishing village by the sea. You can sleep in every day. Go fishing for a few leisurely hours. Play with your children. Take a nap with your wife. And in the evening, you can stroll into the village, have a few drinks, and play the guitar with your friends." The Mexican fisherman looked puzzled and said, "But isn't that what I'm already doing now? What are we pursuing in our lives?" American talk show host Lincoln Wright once interviewed a child and asked him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" The child innocently replied, "Well, I want to be a pilot." Lincoln Wright then asked, "If one day your plane flew over the Pacific Ocean and all the engines shut down, what would you do?" The child thought for a moment and said, "I would first tell everyone on the plane to fasten their seat belts, and then I would put on my parachute and jump out." As the audience burst into laughter, Lincoln Wright continued to gaze at the child, trying to see if he was just being clever. To his surprise, tears welled up in the child's eyes. "So Lincoln Wright?" asked him. "Why would you do that?" The child's answer revealed his sincere thoughts. "I would go get fuel, and then I would come back." This is the art of listening. First, listen carefully, and don't interrupt halfway. Second, don't project your own thoughts onto what others are saying. Learn to listen. Listen with your heart, and listen with an open mind. Plato once asked his teacher Socrates, "What is love?" Socrates told him to take a walk in the wheat field without turning back, and to pick the biggest and best ear of wheat on the way. But he could only pick it once. Plato thought it was easy and went out confidently. But after half a day, he still hadn't returned. Finally, he appeared before his teacher with a dejected look and explained why he came back empty-handed. "It's rare to come across one that looks good, but I don't know if it's the best. Since I can only pick one, I had to give up and see if there was a better one. It wasn't until I realized I had reached the end that I realized I didn't have a single ear of wheat in my hand." At this point, Socrates told him, "That is love." Plato once again asked his teacher Socrates, "What is marriage?" Socrates told him to take a walk in the fir forest without turning back, and to pick the best and most suitable tree for use as a Christmas tree. But he could only pick it once. Having learned from the previous lesson, Plato went out confidently. After half a day, he returned exhausted, dragging along a tree that looked straight and green but somewhat sparse. Socrates asked him, "Is this the best tree?" Plato replied to his teacher, "Because I can only pick one. After a long time, I finally saw one that seemed decent, and realized that I was running out of time and energy. So I brought it back." At this point, Socrates told him, "That is marriage." Based on this story, Socrates conveyed to Plato a philosophy about love and marriage. In the first story, Plato attempted to pick the biggest and best ear of wheat as a symbol of love. However, he returned empty-handed due to his pursuit of perfection. Socrates told him that this is the essence of love. We often lose the opportunities in our hands while pursuing something better. In the second story, Plato sought to find the best tree for marriage. After putting in effort, he settled for a tree that appeared decent, but not perfect. When asked if it was the best choice, Plato explained that he was running out of time and energy to search for a better tree. Socrates told him that this is the nature of marriage, making decisions within limited choices and not waiting forever for something better. These two stories convey a common point. Love and marriage involve making limited choices and accepting compromises. They are not ideals of perfection but processes that require effort and decision-making within the constraints of reality. Therefore, Socrates used these stories to tell Plato that both love and marriage require making decisions within limited choices and accepting imperfections.